Comrades, with the election season in full swing, there seems to be one word on everybody's lips.
Coalitions.
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 Coalitions are kind of like the political version of renting a place in your 20s. People who don't necessarily like each other are forced to move in together because they can't afford a place on their own.
The rent is too damn high.
For the first time in democratic history, it's looking likely that parties are going to have to shack up together because no one has enough votes to form a majority government. In every poll over the past 6 months, the ANC is sitting close to 40%. These are the most dangerous polls the party has faced since this.
My release.
It's not just polls that show the ANC losing its majority. Like the size of a Toblerone, the ANC's vote count has been shrinking for quite some time.
I think coalitions are definitely here to stay in South Africa, and hallelujah.
So how will coalitions affect South Africa's future? And which parties are moving in together, hooking up, or stabbing each other in the back? Let's get away. For some politicians, like the IFP's Velinkosi Hlabisi, a coalition is like a marriage.
Those who are married know. You quarrel, but you said we made a vow that until death set us apart, we won't break. Similar to a coalition government.
That's my dream of a perfect wedding and happily ever after. Just got up and smoke.
It's like a marriage where you're getting into bed with multiple people you were just insulting yesterday and potentially ditching tomorrow.
South Africa really became aware of coalitions after the 2016 local government elections, when the ANC lost its majority metros, including Johannesburg, Nelson Mandela Bay, and Tshwane. But really, the birth of coalitions in South Africa goes back to when we decided to follow a proportional electoral system instead of a first-past-the-post system, starting with the 1994 elections.
Yeah, well, if it's got anything to do with the South African Post Office, I am not holding my breath.
Luckily, we don't use the first-past-the-post system anymore. It's also the same system which allowed the National Party to beat the United Party in 1948 and kick off apartheid, despite only winning 37.7% of the popular vote. And we all know how that worked out.
Oh, count me in for the other system. What's that called again?
Proportional representation. If you want to know how that works, we have a video you can check out here. But in a nutshell, it ensures smaller parties are more likely to be represented in parliament, which leads to an increased likelihood of coalitions.
It sounds good in theory, but from what I've seen in our metros, South African coalitions need some serious marriage counseling.
Tensions have been laid bare at the Ekurhuleni Council meeting.
The EFF and ANC councillors have exchanged blows.
It's alleged that DA councillor Reno Kaiser was hit by a glass water jug.
If this is what we are in for at national government level, if the ANC dips under 50%, I might just join Karen from next door and pack my bags to Australia.
How much is that to get to Australia again?
The good news is that there are more than 82 municipalities run by coalitions in South Africa. But most of them you don't hear about because they're not at each other's throats arguing about budget, potholes, who last did the dishes, whose turn it was to throw out the garbage, and why can't you just keep it together in front of our friends, Kevin, with everything I do to keep this household together. They're not all bad. Just ask Mbali and Tuli.
I think coalitions are definitely here to stay in South Africa, and hallelujah. I would much rather have parties having to compromise, be mature and work together and making sure that they really do what is needed for the voters, rather than the abnormal system we've had of one party dominance for a very long time.
But I'm wondering, what makes some coalitions fail and others succeed?
It's kind of interesting that there's actually a lot of overlap with the dating world.
Open communication, healthy boundaries, and a secure attachment style.
Wow, KG, I'm impressed. But no, let's hear from the people in the arena.
After making mistakes in Johannesburg with the EFF, that was 2016, we took a stance as an organization to say that we're not doing it for power or for access to government. What we'd rather do is have certain values and principles that are non-negotiable.
I think what's important in those negotiations is everybody places their top 5 on the table. If we can address 3.5 to 4 of everybody, we've got a strong coalition government.
If we place parties on a rough political spectrum according to their values, those closest to each other are more likely to work together in a stable coalition. If values are not the same, and it's just about getting in on the gravy train, then, as UCT Professor Pierre de Vos puts it, the ideological glue that may hold coalitions together is absent. And according to Dr. Corné Mulder, the Freedom Front Plus and DA's successful coalitions are an example of a shared ideology in action.
You mean shared ideology?
The Freedom Front Plus is now co-governing with the Democratic Alliance in 11 councils in the Western Cape with coalition governments. You don't hear about them that often. Why? Because they are quite stable.
Another factor is personality.
But do you think that our political leaders have been incredibly immature up until now? But I think that they'll see that if they continue to go down that path, it's going to hurt them with voters. And we've seen the constant changing of political leadership in some of the big metros, and people are hurtful.
So now we've heard all about coalitions. Let's take a look at who might be moving in together.
You might have heard of this plan.
The Moonshot Pact is aimed at forming a strong, united opposition.
Now known as the Multiparty Charter, when John Steenhuisen said this. What we think he really meant was, let's shoot for the moon and get the ANC out of power. This idea of parties who share the same ideology agreeing to go into coalition is how the DA, Action SA, IFP, Freedom Front Plus, ACDP, and a host of tiny parties no one's ever heard of signed their prenup on the basis that an open market economy is the way to go.
This sounds like the cast of Expendables 5. It doesn't exist yet, but you know it's gonna be
The MPC explicitly restricts members from voting for an EFF or ANC candidate in national or provincial parliaments after the election.
So no cheating there.
My wife and my girlfriend, my wife, sorry to say.
According to the IFP's Klabisa, the MPC wasn't set up at a one-off conference, but party leaders meet every 2 weeks to discuss issues. They also went on a trip to Germany together to see how efficiently the Germans do coalitions.
We came back knowing very well how many spoons of sugar so-and-so puts in his or her tea.
Not even 5 minutes of hanging around with the DA and you can start sensing the Helen Zille effect.
My new podcast, Tea with Helen.
The biggest problem the MPC parties have, though, is maths. No poll has the MPC parties anywhere close to the 51% they would need to govern. So maybe it's not surprising that parties have already started to discuss and then deny plans that involve stepping outside of this MPC agreement. The DA's Jordan Hill-Lewis has not ruled out a coalition with the ANC.
So, all is not so well in the Heavenly Moonshot Pact after all, eh, John? The traditional healer might come in handy. If the ANC sinks below 50% like the polls predict, they'll also be looking for a dance partner.
A coalition between the ANC and MK, or the ANC and EFF, or all three, will involve three leaders who've had mixed relationships in the past.
To take up arms and kill for Zuma.
You say a lot of things about me.
You can take me to court.
Your president has committed treason.
I've got a very close personal relationship with the president. Mr. President, you are a man on top and doing nothing.
Between the DA, EFF, and MK, who is the ANC most likely to give its rose to? We have no idea what will happen. What we do know is that, through sickness and in health, till death do us part, coalitions are here to stay.
Psychologically, it's really good actually for a country to know that it can have different leadership. What we do need to do though is produce some kind of policy framework around how they should work. And for God's sake, not for them to just be about positions or who gets to be deputy mayor or speaker, but rather to be, do we agree on the climate? Do we agree on service delivery? What don't we agree on? And how can we compromise as much as possible? I think once we start seeing that, we'll start seeing the best of what coalitions could be.
Comrades, as we've seen, coalitions are not necessarily a bad or a good thing for South Africa. They're kind of like a garage party. Some days it hits the spot, some days it's a show. But it's always a good idea at 3 a.m. But those can be the nights where you regret who you got into bed with. Either way, it's probably a good thing that we'll be moving past the one party dominating our politics. But like in any marriage, once the honeymoon phase is over, the hard work begins. And if divorce statistics are anything to go by, these parties may not be in bed together for too long.
KG, stop it already, okay? It's dead, it's over. I already said it's dead, it's dead.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay away.
Roll the credits over a minute of Céline Tshika crying.